Like, hey, Scoob, did you hear Nikki Blake is hosting a Scooby-Doo panel? No. Yeah. Like on today's Scooby-Doo episode, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy meet Nikki Blake. Yeah, and a Scooby Panel. Like, we need to get this puppy started. Okay, Nikki Blake, take it away, Scooby-Doo.
Welcome to the Scooby Panel. I'm your host, Nikki Blake from ScoobyAddicts.com, and today we're going to be talking about the special Bravo Dooby Doo. Before we begin, I'll have everybody introduce themselves, and Devin, will start with you.
Hi, I'm Devin Smith. I am a miniature artist, so I make really tiny versions of everyday things, and I'm also a big Scooby-Doo fan.
Wendy?
Hey guys, I'm Wendy Bridge. I'm a commissioned artist. I've been collecting Scooby all of my life, and while I don't love Johnny quite as much as Scooby, I love Johnny Bravo. So this little crossover was like tops in my book.
Joel?
Hey there, I am Joel from the YouTube channel Planet Scooby.
I'm excited because we're going to talk about Bravo Dooby Doo. We don't usually talk about just specific episodes, but this was like one of the first specials that ever aired, and I just thought that we needed to discuss this. It was important. So Bravo Dooby Doo was the 7th episode of season 1 of the Johnny Bravo series. It aired July 21st, 1997 on Cartoon Network. And in the episode, the gang meet Johnny Bravo and they go to his Aunt Jebedissa's house. They can't find her, but they run into the ghostly gardener who chases them through the house. And I'm sorry if you haven't seen this episode before, but
Go
spoiler.
watch it first. Come back.
Aunt Jebedissa was the ghostly gardener, and she was trying to scare Johnny Bravo away because she didn't like him. The episode was extended from 7 minutes to 11 minutes so that they could keep all the gags in, and they padded the episode with the chase scene, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Partible, who is best known for creating the Johnny Bravo series, said he consulted Joe Barbera and Iwo Takamoto for the Bravo Dooby Doo special. And he wrote a great blog post, which I'm going to put in the description of the video. Definitely check out his blog post. Lots of good information in it. As far as voice actors, we had Hadley Kay, who voiced Scooby, who we never saw before in the Scooby series. We had Casey Kasem voice Shaggy, and fun fact, this was the last time that Casey Kasem would voice Shaggy until the TV series What's New Scooby-Doo. Frank Welker voiced Fred, and he also voiced Speed Buggy at the end. Heather North voiced Daphne, and this was the last time that she would voice Daphne until Scooby-Doo and the Legend of the Vampire. BJ Ward voiced Velma, and this was her first time voicing Velma. And then Jeff Bennett voiced Johnny Bravo. And regarding the voice cast, Partible said, unfortunately, we were unable to use Don Messick in our episode because he had recently suffered a stroke when we got the green light. On the positive side, we were able to use Casey Kasem, Frank Welker, and Heather North. We were unable to use Nicole Jaffe because she had retired from acting and performing, so BJ Ward filled in nicely in her role as Velma. And after a long and exhaustive search, we finally found our Scooby in Hadley Kay. So in his blog post, he did say that he did a private screening for Joe Barbera and for Bill Hanna, and that Joe Barbera fell asleep and woke up when they said his name in the episode. So that was pretty funny. So what did you guys think of the series just in general? Wendy?
I don't know why I loved Johnny Bravo so much, but from the day that it first aired, I mean, I was still young enough that I wanted to get up and watch cartoons in the morning. And I feel like there were some really great, like, mid to late 90s Cartoon Network cartoons, and Johnny Bravo, along with Courage the Cowardly Dog, top of the list for sure. But I just love Johnny Bravo. He's just this big, dumb, lovable oaf but I just love how full of himself he is. Like, and because he's always the butt of the gag, I guess that's why. Like, I feel like today, I'm sure there is somebody watching who's like, oh, Johnny Bravo, that's toxic masculinity. And like, no, no, it's not. Stop that. I think they definitely, I feel like that's an evergreen show because they made him the butt of the joke. He's always getting something like dropped on him or getting the crap kicked out of him. So even though, yes, he's like a narcissist, obviously, they totally made up for that. And I don't know, they just, I love John. I don't know what else to say. I just love it. It was a great, fun series. I enjoyed the animation style. It wasn't like too far removed from, you know, like a typical, not realistic, but I mean, there's some cartoons where they're not even cartoony. They're like, they might as well be stick figures kind of. And I feel like Johnny wasn't too far removed from just a regular semi-realistic, you know what I mean? He looks like a guy. The people in it were, you know, loved his mom. Wasn't the biggest fan of, I think her name was Susie, was the little girl that used to follow him around. Although I can't imagine this series without her. I think that she definitely was the right choice to play with the other characters. But when they announced, like when I saw Bravo Dooby Doo the first time, I'm not sure I loved it initially, at least not the way that I do now. But now I totally appreciate it for what it is and how much work went into it. Now that I watch it back, even before reading anything that the creator had said about it, I can recognize a lot of the things that he is now I know he has already admitted to. I can see them for myself, and I really, really appreciate a lot of the stuff that like a lot of the thought and process that went into making it. But yeah, all in all, 10 out of 10 cartoon series. Highly recommend.
Devin, what are your thoughts on this special and Johnny Bravo as a series?
See, this is interesting because I definitely grew up with Johnny Bravo and I remember watching it a lot as a kid, but it's one of those shows that I feel like as I grew up into like a teenager and an adult, I never returned to that much. So I don't remember a lot of the episodes. There's only 2 I remember like really the plot of, and that's this one. And there's one where he's on a plane and it's like the Twilight Zone episode where there's like a thing on the wing and it's like destroying the plane, but it's a clown in the Johnny Bravo episode. So I remember that one and then this one. And I remember the first time I ever watched this episode, actually, I didn't even know it existed because I was always a fan of Scooby-Doo growing up, obviously. And I think I was in like 6th grade when I first saw it. And we were taking like a really long like road trip. It was like 12-hour road trip. And I just got my first iPod Touch. They like just came out. And my mom's like, hey, you can buy like a movie and like a couple episodes of a TV show to watch on this long car ride. And I was like, okay, sweet. So I was going through iTunes and I saw Bravo Dooby Doo because I was looking up Scooby-Doo stuff. And I was like, is there like a Scooby-Doo episode of Johnny Bravo? And then I watched it like 5 times on the way there. And then like, I've just loved it ever since.
Joel, what are your thoughts on the special and Johnny Bravo?
I love the special. I watched it when it first came out. It's a big deal on the internet, pre-Google, pre-whatever, and because it had Scooby. But I never watched Johnny Bravo since or after. Like I probably haven't watched this in 25 years, but I remembered everything that happened. And I remember loving it when it came out. And I had nothing against Johnny Bravo. I would watch it, but I think at the time Johnny Bravo came out, they were releasing Scooby-Doo classic episodes on TV on the same channel. And he only had so much, I was in my 20s by the time this came out. So I didn't have much free time. So I was just probably more watching Scooby-Doo and my other favorite cartoons like Simpsons, Futurama and all that. But after this, I've been like looking for Johnny Bravo DVD or something just to catch up on Johnny Bravo, because this kind of reignited my my curiosity into Johnny Bravo. I think I'd like it. So I'll probably check it out 25 years after.
Yes, this year is Johnny Bravo's 25th anniversary. So
Wow.
that's pretty cool. We're going to talk about when Johnny met the gang, which was pretty funny because, you know, like they pull up and he's talking to them and they're just sitting there looking at him, not saying anything, making the little tink tink noise with their eyes when they blink. And it was just so funny. And then all of a sudden he's like, well, I'm going to see my Aunt Jebediah and she lives in a spooky house. And they're like, a spooky house? Okay. So they got really excited. And I just think that that was really cool how they did that. How, you know, it was just, we're not going to say anything to Johnny Bravo at all until he brings up something that we care about. So Devin, what were your thoughts when Johnny met the gang?
I think it was perfect. It was the perfect thing where he was just in the woods already. It's middle of the night, you know, broken down car, kind of the start of like a horror movie in a way. And the gang just pulls up, and it's just perfect that they were. It's this episode is possibly the perfect satire parody of Scooby-Doo. I think like they nailed it almost exactly, like to a T. Like it's the perfect art style, it's the perfect amount of comedy, and like they just punch you in the face with like, these people do not care about anything unless it's solving a mystery in a creepy house, and like it's just perfect. I love it. Another interesting thing about it was the beginning, like the intro. Usually it's like a title card or whatever, and that says Bravo Dooby Doo, but we got to know who the villain was before the episode even started, which I thought was kind of interesting, because usually it's like, you know, whatever the name of the episode is, and then you kind of like, either you get like the opening shot of the villain like menacing whatever and like the crime happening, and then like the whatever. But it was interesting they kind of showed us who the villain was prior to even starting the episode at all, with like clips from the episode. It was just kind of like a whole different thing that I thought was kind of neat.
Joel, what were your thoughts when Johnny Bravo and the gang met?
Yeah, it was like Devin said, it's a brilliant intro. Usually it's a mystery machine breaking down. I guess so they played on that trope, and it's Johnny's, I guess he's pink Cadillac. I don't know. Some sort of car. I'm assuming pink Cadillac, 'cause that's what Elvis drove. And yeah, it was just, it kind of immediately when we see the gang, there's like a nice contrast between like the 90s kind of animation, and then like we're getting the 70s gang. They're not updating the Scooby gang. It's them kind of still stuck in the 70s. The artwork is like classic Scooby-Doo. So I just thought it just announced right away what its intentions were, which was parody, and I just loved it. It's perfect.
Wendy, what were your thoughts when Johnny Bravo met the gang?
Yeah, definitely now I can look back and say, yeah, perfect Scooby-Doo parody. I think parody is the great word here for why the very first time I watched it, I didn't love it initially, because I was like, oh, are you making fun of Scooby? Was kind of like, I'm definitely a purist with most things. So any other Scooby parody I've not really been a fan of. I think I mean, this is quite far removed, but they had like the Scooby Gang on Robot Chicken one time, which I already was not a fan of that show, but that I hated every second of it. I was like, no, Scooby doesn't belong in this. But I think the best thing about that opening scene is that, like we've talked before about Scooby Natural and how that episode of Supernatural works because it's an episode of Scooby Natural, or excuse me, of Supernatural that the Scooby Gang are guesting in. It's not an episode of Scooby-Doo and then the Supernatural guys are there. And we know that, even though it played great homage to Scooby, it is definitely an episode of Supernatural. And Bravo Dooby Doo is 100% an episode of Johnny Bravo that just happens to have Scooby and the gang in it. So now I can look at it and be like, wow, this is so clever. They're not making fun of it at all. So much effort has been put into maintaining the integrity of the characters. Because, like, let's be honest, the gang in reality would never have to have a haunted house or a mystery to help somebody. So, but in the Johnny Bravo world, totally makes sense. Completely makes sense. And it's hilarious. It's very, very funny. I love how Johnny immediately is drawn to Daphne, of course, but Velma, of course, has a thing for Johnny. But Johnny, when he's like posing, like they're all supposedly sitting in the front seat of a van, you know, and Johnny's got room to like get up above the dashboard with his leg out and everything, you know what I mean? And Daphne's just like, are you kidding? Like, don't even. I'm surprised that they didn't have Fred react to all of this, like, manly posing in front of Daphne. But yeah, definitely great catch on the opening. You know, I feel like no matter what show or episode of anything that you're watching, if you can't nail the beginning and like catch somebody's attention, you've kind of already you've already lost. And they definitely did a great job of like blending Johnny with Scooby to make something that like it made sense and you wanted to keep watching to see what was going to happen.
I liked that they didn't have Fred react and that they just made Daphne strong enough to be like, you're an idiot. So let's talk about the use of jinkies in the episode. One of my favorite lines in this special is jinkies. Isn't that a breakfast cereal or something? Love, love, love that line. It is the best. But we also had the gang say jinkies all in unison at the beginning when they met him. And then it was said throughout the special as well. And then with the glasses, we'll talk about that too. Velma and Johnny Bravo both lost their glasses at the same time. And Velma says, my glasses, I can't see without my glasses. And Johnny says, my glasses, I can't be seen without my glasses. And then they put on the wrong glasses and Velma says, jinkies, everything's dark. I've gone blind. These are some of the greatest lines ever.
Yeah.
Joel, what did you think about the use of jinkies or the glasses?
Yeah, that was all great too, because before this came out, as kids and as we became teenagers, if you grew up in that time, like we kind of joke about this stuff and only Scooby fans would get it. So it's kind of just reassuring just to see the actual animators poking fun at this, and they got the joke, and they delivered that perfect joke with the glasses. And the jinkies thing was just the running gag throughout it. It paid off, and with that finally with, you know, isn't that like a cereal? Because it takes Johnny Bravo several minutes to even fathom what that word means. Like, and all the gang seems that like they have their catchphrases too, like zoinks and jeepers, which no one really ever says in reality. Well, some people say jeepers, but it's rare. But what does jinkies mean? I never knew, but I just knew Velma usually said it most of all out of all the gang. And yeah, it's perfect. And the glasses thing too, I just kind of, it's a nice contrast between how Johnny Bravo is just so self-absorbed in himself, and that pays off later because we find out like his aunt doesn't even want to be around him because he just is constantly thinking about his looks and how he kind of, his image, how he appears to everyone else. So yeah, it was just perfect for Scooby and Johnny Bravo, just those jokes.
I really liked to, whenever they would say jinkies, Johnny Bravo would look at like he was looking at the camera and put his eyebrow up, and it was just like, huh? Like, Wendy, what are your thoughts on jinkies or the glasses or both?
Yeah, the glasses scene is my favorite part of the whole thing. I love it. Even after like 20 years of not seeing that episode, like word for word, I could have done that for you. I've always remembered it because it was such a fun moment. And this was probably not a deliberate callback, but because Warlock of Wimbledon from the Scooby-Doo show was one of my favorite Scooby episodes. Of course, you have the glasses, like the Warlock has done something to Jimmy's glasses so that he can see this special makeup that makes people look like a warlock. And he's playing and his glasses fly off. And Velma grabs them and realizes something's hinky and like swaps them out for hers. So it always reminded me of that because I love that episode. And I find it interesting how now that I'm thinking about it, obviously, like Joel said, almost all the members of the gang have some kind of a word that we associate with them that they use all of the time. And maybe prior to thinking about this in terms of Johnny Bravo, I might have been tempted to say that zoinks would be the most popular, like in culture today. If we were thinking of Scooby-Doo, like what's the word that comes to mind? But you know what? I don't think that's true. I don't think it's zoinks at all. I think it is jinkies. And I think it's maybe just like the way that it rolls off the tongue a little bit more, a little easier than Zoinks does. But yeah, Jinkies just made sense. I imagine that episode using Zoinks or Jeepers or something else, and it just doesn't have the same kind of flavor. And I mean, obviously none of us have the time to do this, but I mean, if somebody has nothing to do, I would love for somebody to just scour the internet for like the word Jinkies and the word Zoinks and the word Jeepers and just see, like, take a poll. Which gets used the most, like, in social media by people? I mean, I would be interested in that. I'm not going to do that, but you know, it would be fun. But yeah, no, the glasses scene is like chef's kiss perfection. That should have won an award. That scene. I'm just saying.
I would have to say Ruh-roh might be in the running though for catchphrases, because
Mhm.
I know a lot of people, if I bring up Scooby-Doo, like the first thing they say is Ruh-roh.
Yes. Good
So.
point.
Devin, what are your thoughts on them using Jinkies and losing their glasses?
I mean, you guys pretty much said it all, but I mean, the glasses scene is just, it's perfect. It literally couldn't be more perfect. Like, I literally told Tasha, we watched it a minute ago, my wife, and I was like, the glasses scene is literally my favorite part when he says, like, I can't be seen without my glasses. Like, that is expert writing on a classic joke from Scooby-Doo. Like, they nailed that perfectly. They couldn't have done better at that. And I've never even thought about it until you brought it up, Wendy, that Jinkies, I'm sorry to disagree, Nikki, but like, I think Jinkies might be the most popular because, like, when I'm thinking of Jinkies, like, I can't even think of when like Shaggy says Zoinks in like the live action movie, but like I can picture Velma saying, "Let's get jinky with it,"
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
nothing else to say there.
Let's move on to the relationships. So I've never been a fan of relationships in Scooby-Doo, but because this was a Johnny Bravo episode, it made it okay. So we saw that Velma had a crush on Johnny Bravo. Johnny Bravo had a crush on Daphne. Daphne was not having any of it. And this is the first time that we really see any type of relationship between Fred and Daphne. And it would have driven me absolutely crazy if this was in a Scooby episode, but because it was in Johnny Bravo, it was just hilarious when Fred's like, but Daphne, we have to split up. And she was like, oh, yeah, right. Wendy, what are your thoughts on the relationships in this episode?
Yeah, 100% agree. Normally, I would never be in favor of the Daphne Fred pairing, like making it obvious at all. But I kind of think that maybe that's why it works, because it's obvious, but it's also subtle. Like somehow they've bridged that, like it's totally in your face. There is no mistaking what's going on and the intention here. And yet they're not rubbing our face in it. When Fred like breaks the fourth wall, when Daphne, like they're all coming down the staircase being chased, and Daphne jumps into Fred's arms and he turns and looks and's like and gives a big wink. I mean, I would normally hate anything like that, but in this context, in this episode, second favorite moment after the glasses, love the wink, and especially because Fred looks at the audience, which totally fits because it's Johnny Bravo. That is something that would happen in an episode of Johnny Bravo. I felt kind of bad about Velma liking Johnny and not getting anything back, but honorable mention to that little Cartoon Network short that came later on where Johnny Bravo is like, it's like a rainy night and he's in this diner and he's like essentially professing his love for Velma. But you know, it didn't work out. She had things to do. And so that, when I think of that with the episode, I have no regrets about it. I love it. I did initially feel a little bit bad for her. I don't think it would have worked in the episode if they had done that. So I understand why they didn't, but they totally made up for it with that short afterwards, and it just made it so much fun. But yeah, I actually really do enjoy too just Daphne, like you said earlier, Nikki. We didn't need Fred to react to how Johnny was acting towards Daphne because it was just like, all the more power to her to be like, absolutely not. I'm not into this. You know, I'm into splitting up with Fred, but I'm not into you. And just, I don't know. It's so perfect. Oh my gosh. I don't even know what to say. That's how much I love this special. It's ridiculous. I don't even know that I realized how much I loved this until I started rewatching it. And now we're talking about it. And I'm just like, oh, Johnny Bravo. What? I don't know.
It's been a long time since I had watched this, and I think I've watched it 5 times this week.
Yeah.
So, Devin, what are your thoughts on the relationships in this episode?
Well, one, I was gonna say, I watched it also many times this week, couple few times in preparation. I just can't get enough of it. I don't know. There's something about it. I think it. I don't want to dare to say, but it might be my favorite episode of like Scooby-Doo, even though it's not a Scooby-Doo episode. It's just so good. Like I love it so much. But with the Daphne and Fred relationship, like Wendy said, it's super subtle in this, but like it's in your face, like you exactly know what's going on. And it's interesting because like I feel like it's something that people like wanted to like happen or like kind of picked up on in the past, but like this was the first instance of that actually happening, like in a Scooby-Doo episode. And like because now we get it, you know, like in Mystery Incorporated and like the movies and stuff like that, you know, like it's like normal for the relationships to happen in those nowadays. But like when this came out, I feel like this was actually the first like I don't know if you want to consider this episode canon or not, but like the first canon moment of them like actually being like in some sort of relationship, you know what I mean? And also I think we're kind of bearing the headline, Aunt Jebediah and Shaggy. What are our thoughts there?
That was a little weird.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's no one's mentioning it.
I mean, is it, well, okay, I would like to say something here. Even though maybe we're not into it, tell me, I know what Nikki's going to say. I know what Nikki will say right off the bat. She's going to be like, Wendy, shut up. But interesting how Shaggy and Aunt Jebediah might be like a bit distasteful in like a very generic way, but like it's fine and we can laugh at it. But suggest Daphne with Paul Stanley, and all of a sudden certain people have a problem with it. It's kind of the same thing though.
Neither are acceptable. No.
I'll accept that. Oh my gosh.
That was one of the big things that I hated about that Kiss movie. But all right, we're not here to talk about Kiss. Joel, what were your thoughts on the relationships in Bravo Dooby Doo?
Well, now I'm thinking Aunt Jebediah and Shaggy could work out if Jebediah is like a fantastic cook. Shaggy would be set.
That's true.
But if she can't cook, won't work out. But yeah, just to sum up what everyone else has said, yeah, it's just I don't like it in general relationships, but I loved it in this episode. It's funny, it was obvious, but also subtle, and I think as Devin mentioned, everyone probably thought of it before, just because Fred and Daphne are always, for so many episodes, they always went off together, and when you're going through puberty, it crosses your mind once in a while, but you don't actually want to see it happen in cartoons. So it was just funny that they just kind of did that, and they gave like Freddie and Daphne some great jokes with that too. And that other thing Wendy was talking about with Velma and Johnny Bravo talking about Velma, I hadn't seen that before, and I watched that because it was in that blog post you shared, Nikki. And there's that one scene too where Johnny Bravo's sunglasses turn into heart shapes, which I thought might have happened in this episode, and I rewatched it like 4 times because I kind of zoned out, and I'm like, did I miss it? And then have to watch it again, but it doesn't happen in this episode. But I thought it was clever in the bumper or whatever they had. And that's all I got to say about that.
So let's talk about the chase scene, the very long chase scene. I thought it was kind of weird when Johnny Bravo and Shaggy kept switching with each other, and they were like running backwards, and it just looked super uncomfortable and weird. I don't know. The song, Happy Haunted Sunshine House, was catchy. It was fun. I liked it. And the other thing that really caught my attention was when the ghostly gardener, they were in the wheelbarrow and they're like going down the hall and then going down the steps, and the ghostly gardener gets out the weed whacker and turns it on. And they're going down the steps, and as it, like, the weed whacker is the only thing that's not moving, and I'm thinking they would have been like hit by this weed whacker. Pieces of skin would be everywhere. I mean, it would be awful. It's like a horror movie. It just would not have been good. Like, yeah. Devin, what were your thoughts on the chase scene?
Well, like you said, it's so long. There's like a million things I could say about it. And I kind of loved how long it was because, like, I feel like just how drawn out it was, it made it funnier to me. I don't even know. The song was great. I love the song so much. I think I tried to make that my ringtone in like 8th grade one time. But I like couldn't find it online at the time. Like I literally couldn't find it. I was like, where am I going to find the song? I could like barely find the episode online anywhere at that time too, you know? But the chase scene, I don't know. All of it's great. When Johnny stops to fix his hair that's all messed up, and like the gardener's like pops his head out from behind the curtains and they're running past the window is fantastic. And like especially like the doors scene is great when there's two Johnnies and the wheelbarrow's just going by itself. Like this is one of those episodes where like I have so much to say about it because it's so good, but also saying nothing is almost better because there's nothing to say almost at the same time. It's so weird. It's just good. It's just great. And if you haven't watched it and you're listening to this panel for some reason, I don't know why you're listening to this panel, go watch that first and then come back.
What I really liked about the whole thing too is that whoever made it was definitely a Scooby fan, because in this chase scene, like, they covered everything that was, you know, normal in a Scooby episode. So, Joel, what was your thoughts on the chase scene?
Yeah, the chase scene was great. We hadn't seen something like that really since season 2 of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You?, where they had a chase song. I wish that song was included on that Scooby Snacks tracks, but I don't know if it came out too early or not, but it'd be nice. Yeah, it'd be great to have that, like, just alone without, I love that CD.
Yeah, it's great.
And yeah, I love the two Johnnies in the hallway. And I kind of took that as like maybe a nod back to how all the animation errors classic Scooby-Doo tended to have. I thought it was a nice poke at that. And yeah, it was a great chase scene. The length of it too is just, it got so silly at, you know, when it goes past 4 minutes, you're just like, okay, this is just perfect. Yeah, that's all I can say. It was awesome.
Wendy, what were your thoughts on the chase scene?
So I'm not really a fan of chase scenes in Scooby. Season 2 is not my favorite, although I love the songs on their own. I love it, but I'm just not the biggest fan of a chase scene. However, the song in this chase scene is so good. The only regret that I have is I feel like, although maybe this would kind of defeat the purpose, I do think that, okay, yes, we know now they did pad the scene because they wanted a longer episode. But like Joel said, it kind of adds to the flavor of the episode by having it be like ridiculously long. My only wish is that they would have just like thrown another verse in. Because to be honest, I found it so catchy that I didn't even really, like, rewatching it now, I didn't even really notice that it was particularly long, because this, like, the verse just kept playing over and over in my head, and the chorus, you know what I mean? And I think that maybe one of my favorite things about the whole episode and the attention to detail by an obvious Scooby fan was, I mean, tell me, was that song written by the Johnny Bravo creator? Was that not like the perfect spoof of one of like the Austin Roberts songs from season 2? Like, absolutely. It was so spot on for what it should sound like. It was great. It was great. I love that song. Ben, if you're watching, we need like a full 4-minute song, like a full-on song that you release on iTunes or something, because Devin needs a new ringtone.
Honestly,
And
please,
I
I'm
need
begging.
something to listen to 47 times in a row until I hate it for a little while. Like, we need this. We need this in our lives. That song was amazing. The lyrics were great. The music was great. Like, just come on. We need like a full length bam. There it is. There it is. Best part of that scene, that song.
Yeah, the song was really very similar to the original songs that they had. Yeah,
And
definitely had that vibe.
it was actually like about a haunted house too, not just like being in love with an ostrich or, you know. So it was great. It's perfect.
The unmaskings in this episode are really cool too. So the first time that they unmasked the ghostly gardener, it was Professor Hyde White. He's from What a Night for a Night. The second time was Harry the Hypnotist from Bedlam in the Big Top. And then Bigfoot from The Ghost of Bigfoot. Then Don Knotts. And then Joe Barbera, which was so cool that they put Joe Barbera in there. They all were like, Joe Barbera. And then Johnny Bravo looks at the camera and he's like, who's that? that was just great. And then she unmasks herself and she says, and I would have done it too if it hadn't been for you meddling kids, meaning gone away from Johnny Bravo. Because he annoys her. So oh my gosh. Devin, what were your thoughts on the unmaskings?
I loved it. I mean, you're not. I mean, any question you ask me about this episode, I'm just gonna say I love it. So like, short and sweet answer there. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, have we ever gotten that in Scooby Doo where there's been a double unmasking before, or after this? Has that happened? I can't like think of anything off the top of my head. I don't know if that's happened or not. But like, I love that it. Even if it did happen like somewhere else, and it happened like, oh, you pull off one mask and another mask. Like, I love that it just keeps going, and like the reference. It's like, oh, these. Joe Barbera, like that's just great. That's fantastic. You know what I mean? And like maybe even kids watching it, they might not know who that is. So like Johnny's saying that to the camera, they're like, I don't know, who is that? I have no idea. You know what I mean? And like just the fact that the gang was so right away, they're like, oh, you just don't like him because he's annoying? Like for sure, we'll go tie him to a tree and get rid of him. Like, let's go. Like it's just that's great. That's fantastic. Greatest villain motive ever. Like, oh, this guy is annoying me. Like, oh, I totally understand. I get it. You know, that's great.
Joel, what were your thoughts on the unmaskings?
Oh yeah, the unmasking, like I still 25 years later, I knew exactly who was being unmasked before they did it. That's how memorable it was. And I remember about thinking back then, like Professor Ed White, he's not even like a bad guy. He's the guy in the first episode where he's the guy bound with that Indian mask over him and his eyes are like shifting because he's a professor that goes missing. But I'm sure they knew that too. And then Harry the Hypnotist, we all knew who he was. And then Bigfoot, he wasn't that popular back then, just as like a Scooby character, but people knew Bigfoot was. But like he's not the first Scooby-Doo villain you think of. So they're kind of going deep there, even though he is beloved, that Bigfoot. And then Don Knotts, I always associate Don Knotts with Scooby-Doo because he was in 2 episodes, but just Don Knotts' facial expressions, you just say Don Knotts and I start laughing just because I love that man. And then Joe Barbera, yeah, it was just a perfect way to sum it all up. Just because if you're a Scooby fan, you know, you always saw like Hanna-Barbera and you just knew who Joe Barbera was. Yeah, that's all I have to add.
I did think it was funny that even Johnny Bravo said Joe Barbera, and then he turned to the camera and he's like, who's that? So he knew. Wendy, what were your thoughts on the unmaskings?
Yeah, obviously it's not the same thing, but what reminds me of that scene is the very next year we get Zombie Island, and when they're in the forest and there's a zombie that's like up against the back of the van and Fred's gonna unmask it and he's trying to like pull the mask off and it's the fisherman. No, it's not him. It's the ferryman. oh no, it's not him. Oh, well, maybe it's real. And then the head pops off. So obviously it's not quite the same gag, but when I saw that in Zombie Island, it reminded me of like the multiple unmaskings in Bravo Dooby Doo. Which is it was just a fun scene to kind of drag it out a little bit more, and definitely another nod to from a Scooby fan to other Scooby fans and the franchise itself, which I mean, who could find fault with that? You know, honestly, I think that the whole episode is kind of just like a love letter to Scooby-Doo and William and Joe and Hanna-Barbera in general. And like, yes, it's being done in a funny tongue-in-cheek kind of manner because that's what Johnny Bravo was. Like, I'm kind of ashamed of like what I don't know what would I was be like 11 years old when I saw that. Like, I'm a little ashamed that I didn't catch on at first that it wasn't something bad or meant to be making fun of it, because now there's nothing bad in it at all. It's so well done and clever, and so many people were involved that were Scooby people. You know, even Iraj Paran did the graphics for Bravo Dooby Doo. And Ewo and Joe, so many people were involved to make that an ode to Scooby that maintained Scooby's integrity. And something I hadn't thought of until now, and maybe this is just my perception of it, but thinking back to like the memorable moments, I almost feel like Scooby and Shaggy were like the afterthought in the episode. And like, this was the time for everybody else to shine and have their moment. Like, we're watching it because it's about Scooby, but I feel like Scooby wasn't really the focus of the episode, which I kind of like, because for so many years, I mean, obviously the show is called Scooby-Doo. Scooby has to be the star, but I kind of like that we got to see the rest of the gang just in the forefront a little bit more, or at least they were getting the memorable moments and the gag lines that we remember all these years later. But yeah, Joe Barbera was like priceless. You know, whether you did know who it was or you didn't, hopefully anybody that didn't went and looked it up and then was like, oh wow, that was so fun that they did that. I think it's hilarious that he fell asleep during the screening of it. I'm a little bit curious. I would kind of like to know why it was just Joe, and if Bill was maybe like a little bit not put out, but disappointed that they didn't include him. You know, I don't know. That's just like a question that I have, is like, why was it just Joe and
Well,
not?
in that article, didn't it say that he showed it to him afterwards too?
Oh yeah,
Or am I
he
making
showed
that
it
up?
to him, but like why? But
Oh,
exactly.
it's separate
But
times.
why is he not like in the episode? I just feel
Oh,
like it's
gotcha.
a little bit weird that they only like they singled out one of them to put in the episode. I don't know. Maybe it's just that it kind of sounded like Joe had way more hands-on with the project, and maybe Bill was just like, he showed it to him when it was done to see what he thought of it, and maybe that was why. But I don't know. I'm really praying that there weren't any like even secret like bad feelings, like, oh, why did Joe get to have a cameo and I didn't. I really hope that didn't happen, because Joe's was like, it was so perfect.
It was perfect. And they did say that they consulted Joe Barbera and Iwo Sakamoto. So
Mhm.
maybe that's why they only put Joe in, because he was
Yeah.
the consultant on it and Bill Hanna wasn't. But
Mhm.
so I really loved this special. I thought it was amazing. I thought the people that worked on it really were definitely Scooby fans. They knew a lot about Scooby. They put everything into this that made Scooby what Scooby is. And they just did such a great job with it. Do you guys have any final thoughts on this special, Joel?
I do, and I'm just thinking of it now. So it might be not fully a complete thought, but do you think if we didn't have this special, would Scooby's I can't say the word, trajectory? Someone can say it for me. You think it would be different? Like, do you think we would have had Zombie Island? Because we had so many people working with this. Do you think maybe they had so much fun doing it, they decided to go ahead with Zombie Island? I'm just speculating. I don't know. It just,
Question.
because it was so well received among the Scooby community back then, and maybe they're just kind of testing the waters with this. It's just something I just thought of now. I don't know. That's my only thought.
I kind of think that, like, I don't even want to say this, but I don't think that it led to Zombie Island. But I am like just like this much concerned that maybe it did open the door to taking Scooby in a less serious, more free and loose kind of fashion that has exploded in a way now, looking at it in 2022, that I don't think they ever imagined would happen. But I mean, there is always a catalyst for something. There's always that moment in time where it's like, okay, if you allow this, at some point in time, that's going to blow up and it's maybe going to bite you in the butt. And I think it is entirely possible that this special was that moment of like, hey, we can make a joke of this, even though that wasn't the intent. But yeah, I think maybe that it could have potentially led to that, just kicked open that door just enough that later on somebody walked through it that really shouldn't have.
That kind of checks out too, because like this was like the first, like, as we've said, like parody of Scooby-Doo, you know what I mean? And it's like there's like unofficial parodies, like you mentioned, like the Robot Chicken ones and things like that, and there's like Family Guy parodies and other cartoons, I'm sure, you know, plenty of parodied Scooby-Doo. But like there's also been like a lot of like official Scooby-Doo parodies, you know what I mean, with like Scooby Natural, and there was like the Night of the Living Doo and the Scooby-Doo Project. The Scooby-Doo Project. Like there's been plenty of like Scooby-Doo I forgot I was wearing this. There's been plenty of like Scooby-Doo parodies, and I feel like that did kind of like open up the door, you know what I mean? Like, and it's kind of like, I feel like all the parodies aren't necessarily like making fun of the franchise though. They're almost like love letters, like, you know, like this was like you make fun of the people that you like the most, you know what I mean? You poke fun at people you like. So I feel like that's like what all the parodies kind of are, is like, oh, we like Scooby-Doo, so let's make fun of the things that we like about it and like exaggerate it. So I don't know if that answered your question at all, Joel, and I know it didn't.
That's fine. It wasn't really, it was an open-ended question.
It is
I like your answer.
possible though that this special reignited people's love for Scooby-Doo.
Yeah,
And you know, the creators saw that and decided, oh well, maybe it's time for us to do something else with Scooby. So it's possible that it could have led to just not the special itself, but the love of Scooby-Doo and the positive feedback that they got because Scooby-Doo was in this, that maybe that led to them doing more movies. So
Yeah.
it's possible. And I've heard some people have said that, you know, this special did reignite their love of Scooby. And so maybe
This was the perfect thing to do, because after like, you know, there was like 6 years or whatever it was, you know, between like pup named Scooby-Doo and this or whatever. So there was like a period of time where there was no Scooby-Doo, and maybe this was like the perfect way to do it, was with a funny kind of making fun parody one-off like 11-minute episode or whatever, instead of like a full new show or a movie. Maybe like something simple like this was the perfect like diving in back into the Scooby-Doo world, you know what I mean, for people. So maybe it was a good way to go. Obviously it was. We've had a lot of Scooby-Doo media since every year. So I mean, it's worked out great.
Joel, do you have anything else you want to add?
Devin just reminded me, like, I'll go on record saying this. The 6-year drought we had with Scooby was way worse than the COVID. I'd rather do COVID again than that 6 years of no Scooby. And,
Put that on a shirt, you know.
Wendy, do you have any final thoughts on this special?
Yeah, well, I won't blab on because I obviously clearly I love this, but I would just say, guys, go and find the special. If you haven't watched it, or if you have watched it but it's been a long time, or I mean, let's be honest, probably all 4 of us are going to watch it one more time within the next week or so. I mean, I just feel like that's going to happen. Maybe tonight, it's possible. But go and watch the special. That's all I want to say is go and watch it, whether you have seen it or you haven't, go watch it again.
Devin, any final thoughts on Bravo Dooby Doo?
Yeah, I'm actually rewatching it right now. I'm not even paying attention to what Wendy's talking about. No, I kid. Not to drag it on the conversation anymore about it, but we didn't talk that much about Scooby and Shaggy because you did mention it towards the end there. I liked Scooby's voice in this a lot. It's a lot different than what we usually got, and there's something like charming about it. How it's very mush mouthy, like oh, you know what I mean? It's very like a lot of lip going on, and I and I really like that. And also Shaggy says like and like the word crazy in this a lot. He's like check out this crazy pantry. Like he says crazy to describe things. I feel like 20 times. It was probably twice, but I feel like he said it a lot. And that's all I have to say.
I didn't mind Scooby's voice in this. I thought he did a pretty good job. And it kind of fit because again, it wasn't a Scooby show. It was a Johnny Bravo show. So it fit and it made sense. I liked because like Scooby and Shaggy were scared through a lot of it. And I liked that like shivering sound effect that they make, that it was almost like amplified. And that was pretty cool. Yeah, Joel, what did you think of Scooby's voice?
Yeah, I like the voice. I remember 25 years ago knowing it was a different actor. I knew it wasn't Don Messick, because is this the first time without Don Messick ever? I think it is. Yeah. And yeah, I knew right away, but I just thought Don Messick retired or something, because that kind of information wasn't everywhere back then, right? And I was also happy I knew right away that was Heather North's voice, and I knew Velma was a little different. But yeah, and Casey Kasem was obvious, and Frank Welker. But yeah, the Scooby voice, I liked it.
Wendy, what did you think of Scooby's voice?
I'm so sorry. I hated it. However, I will caveat that by saying that objectively speaking, I can see how, I mean, it's the reason it wasn't Dawn is very, very unfortunate, and it's very, very sad. And of course, I would always love to see Dawn doing Scooby no matter what. However, I do think that this is an instance where I don't think it suffered having a different voice, even one that was, you know, like Devin said, a lot more like mush mouth, and it's like a really bad imitation of Scooby. And but it works. It works.
I loved it.
Because of what the episode is. It is Johnny Bravo, and maybe like I'm trying to imagine the episode with Dawn's voice, and I can't, which is really weird because I love that it's the other three are original voice actors in it, but it might have actually worked out for the better that it wasn't Dawn doing it, like, because it does suit the episode. I don't like it myself, but I can appreciate it.
Here, I just thought of this. I think the reason that the voice kind of works for the episode is because I feel like they didn't do a lot with Scooby as a character in this episode for parody wise. So it's almost like his voice is the thing that's the parody of him compared to everybody else who already has their other things. I feel like this is like, that's what he got. Even if it was on accident, that's kind of what he got as the like satire part of him. So
yeah, good point. Good point.
Well, hopefully you have watched the episode, and if you have, let us know what you thought about it in the comments, because we're curious. We want to know. Did you like it? Did you hate it? If you hated it, like, don't comment that.
Yeah.
We don't want to know that you hated it.
Even if you hated
Just
it,
kidding.
tell
I'm
me
just
you loved
kidding.
it.
Just kidding. We're gonna wrap up, but before we do, if you guys can let everyone know where they can find you on social media, and Devin, we'll start with you.
You can find me on pretty much like any social media platform at awesome _ thanks. Mainly Instagram is the place that I'm on most, so check me out there.
Wendy?
On Instagram, I'm at Wendy Bridge. Twitter, Wendy Loves Jesus, and my blog is wendylovesjesus.wordpress.com.
Joel?
You can find me on YouTube. Just type in Planet Scooby.
And you can find all my links on scooby-addicts.com. Thank you for joining us for another Scooby panel.
Hello. Johnny Bravo panel. Greetings. I'm really sorry I couldn't have been taking part in that, but I just definitely wanted to record a little shout out to say this particular episode of Scooby-Doo means a lot to me, even though, yeah, I know it's Johnny Bravo. But it kind of marked a return to the idea of the original gang, and it had come out a few years after a lot of things had just stopped being made. And I remember talking to some of my friends a few times, and it's like, they should bring Scooby back. And they're like, well, whatever. It doesn't really matter. We're kind of grown up, aren't we? And I'm like, well, yeah, it'd still be nice to have new cartoons like the old school. So after that episode came out, and I'm like, somebody's listening to me in the ether. And then after that, the movies that came out were really great. The ones that kind of started a renaissance again of Scooby, and Zombie Island being my particular favorite of that. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say, and as Johnny would say, thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to another Scooby panel. I'm Nikki Blake from ScoobyAddicts.com. If you like these panels, please subscribe to my channel for more great discussions. A huge shout out to our patrons, Julie Rosen, Ross from ScoobyFan.net, Scooby-Doo of Roblox, and Ruth Elliott Hillsden. If you would like to support the Scooby panel, please go to patreon.com/ScoobyAddicts. Scooby Panel is available in podcast form on most podcast platforms, or as a web series on YouTube. A very special thank you to Joel from Planet Scooby, miniature artist Devin Smith, and artist, blogger, and Scooby collector Wendy BRYDGE. Scooby and Shaggy were voiced by Scott Innes. Check out Scott's website, onescottshop.com. Scooby Addicts artwork by Will Davenport. Video editing by Nikki Blake. Music composed and performed by Bovine Nightmares. Please join us next time for another Scooby panel.
Like, I have to do the hand with it. I can't even do it. Like Scoob, like there's Aunt Jebediah.